Two raiders plumb the depths of their experience to make sense of a world gone completely insane. Subscribe for the word. Like and leave a comment. Stranger by the Hour.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Stranger by the Hour. This is episode 107, and we are in Redondo Beach at the Vault with Jason, also known as Sinister Monopoly, man.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, man, that's really awesome. Thanks for having us here, man.
Likewise.
So, Jason, man, you have a very interesting story, man. And I was telling Aaron on the drive up here, like, I really enjoy talking with folks who have, like, lived like on the other side of the mirror, like through the looking glass, you know, like listening to your backstory, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Like, yeah, you know, you're referred to some folks as the squares, man. And,
okay.
you know, Aaron and I's life basically took us through places that, you know, definitely removed all the square from us, man. So I'd really like to just jump into your backstory a little bit, and then we've been shooting the shit for a minute, and we'll just keep on shooting the shit, man. So
sure. Where do you guys where do you think we should start off?
Well, so you're a California native, right?
I am,
From around this area, or?
Yep. So we refer to this area as the South Bay,
Okay.
and the South Bay is like Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Redondo,
Okay.
where we are today. And then there's other little areas that are a part of it as well, but. You know, there are other areas like San Francisco. They refer to, I think,
there's they got a South Bay up there too. And
my parents moved here like before I was like 1 year old, and I went to all of my schools in Manhattan Beach.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to pin your age. Are you like an '80s kid? Is that
No. I'm actually 51 now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right, looking good, man.
Maybe it's the prison.
It's all the push-ups
Yeah,
and the fucking healthy eating, man. Sweet, man. So you got into some shit. You know, there's an awesome backstory on this from Fresh Out. I don't want to steal any Big Herc's thunder, man, but so eventually you moved into some businesses that they got you into the weed game, and during that period of time, it was illicit.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of the place where Aaron and I, listening to the backstory, like saw a lot. We heard a lot of similarities between the things that we did in special operations, man. Like one of the things that stick out in my mind, and Aaron was talking about it a little earlier, was the use of what we would call a surrogate, and even like sub-surrogate. So like if we needed a guy, it could be like unwitting, you know. It's like we may know a guy who owns a shipping thing. And when we start using that guy, his guys may not necessarily know that they're working for us.
Makes sense.
Well,
I get that.
And just like people that aren't familiar with the story, it might be useful to like tell them the scale of your operation. So they might be imagining like a guy selling, you know, dime bags to people at the junior college.
This
or
is
something.
not that.
This is not what you.
Yeah. So. Right around probably 2010 was probably like one of the heights of what I was doing, and so when we speak of the height of it, so eventually I got to the point where I had 3 airplanes. So, but I'm not a pilot though, right? So I like what you're talking about, surrogates and whatnot. So I recruited pilots, and then I eventually put up my own money and started buying planes that operated and functioned better. You know, one pilot, he said, you know, he needed a bigger, better, faster to get above the clouds and gas up less. So I gave him $170,000, and I bought another plane. And so when we're getting to the planes, is what I was doing was I was importing hydroponic Kush, where I took these specific Kush clones. And I like curated them, gathered them, whatever, and I sent them over the border to Canada. And I sent them to an organization, not to like one guy, you know what I mean? And that crew just started like expanding. And so I started being like the only person in America that would have like, you know, maybe 800 pounds of Kush. You know, and stuff like that. It's a very almost like the Ferrari or the Louis Vuitton. Yeah. It's a very high end in the cannabis industry. And so when that started actually landing in my backyard, eventually the medical market in Los Angeles started driving the price down. So I decided to start sending it. I had so much, start sending it into other states. So like my first state was Detroit, and then I went from Detroit to Chicago to Atlanta, and that's when the other plane came into play because I kept getting requests to go to like New York, New Jersey, and the plane wasn't like suitable. I mean, you could get there, but my gosh, it would take you forever. You know, like all this gas up, come down. You don't really fly at night. It's a Cessna sort of piece of thing, right? And so. So we went bigger, and then eventually I expanded into those areas out there, you know, like Maine and Boston, and you know, and then through the whole area I went through, started spreading into like St. Louis, Ohio, Cleveland. Eventually, when in retrospect, at one point it was 11 states, and then including Hawaii, and then I was operating and functioning, I guess. Moving the illicit products through 3 countries. So in the end, these Canadians, they weren't using when they would give this to me on consignment.
Okay.
And let's say I would owe them at a height maybe like $9 million, and at some point they would say, "Hey, how much do you have?" And they don't want currency, so they asked me to buy them like blow. Right. So then I start buying massive amounts of blow just to pay them for the cannabis.
Yeah.
So now it's a trading commodities thing.
Okay.
You know, and so then they take that commodity, take it across to Canada, and now they double their money. So the $9 million that I owed them, if I shoot them $9 million, now they flip that into like 18.
And that's because it's harder to get that up there in Canada?
For instance, I was charging them like $23,000 for a kilo, and then they would take it, and if it's like what they would always want, what's called good AAA, that would be $38,000 to $42,000. So they're like almost doubling their money.
Did they put you on to the cocaine source, or did you have to?
No. I did that for them one time. Wow. They came to me and they were like, "Hey, you know. We can't send any more weed because we have a house in Orange County that functions as, you know, like it distributes, it picks up the keys as the money comes in.
Okay.
And then they were no longer able to get those, so they came to me and they said, "We have a ton of money at this house, and we have the money that you owe us, and we're not able to, like, it's just too much, you know." Yeah. And I was like, they're like, "Do you know anybody that could maybe," and at the moment I didn't really put it much together, although like when I would turn cash in, it was oftentimes to somebody that didn't even speak English. And it was because it was like the amigos that sell the blow.
Right.
And they were just getting the money.
Oh.
You know?
You're effectively paying them for the blow on behalf of it. Yeah.
The Canadians would have me turn it into someone I never met.
Yeah.
You know?
So during this time, was weed legal in Canada?
No.
Okay. All right.
This was complete, like, modern day bootlegging is what I call it. Like, you know, the Al Capones of moving alcohol. We were moving cannabis well before our day.
You know, which is funny because just like bootlegging, I mean, the government was probably also moving liquor. People in the government were also moving liquor. I mean, you know, the government was moving cocaine into Los Angeles. So it always cracks me up that the things that people get pinched for that the government's doing, like, en masse.
Well, you know,
totally, yeah.
The government is a mob.
Well, that's
it's the biggest one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we were gangbanging for the United States government, basically.
Yeah. In looking back at some of, like, in the beginning of fighting my case, it also occurred to me that all of these agents were probably doing this to get bonuses. And that bonus might be a lot. It could be even like a $500 bonus. And it seemed like their objective was to get as much forfeiture as they possibly could.
Well,
yeah.
So if you're a dope dealer in an apartment and a leased car, they probably don't care.
Yeah.
They want the guy who's got the Aston Martin and the car and the Rolex, because at the end of the day, they're going to go to their boss and say, "Look, boss, we got an Aston Martin, a Rolex, and fucking a bunch of money." And then the boss says, "You guys are fucking great. Here's an extra one for you."
So in your story, there was a time when the DEA showed up and you know, they raided your place and walked off with a bunch of stuff. And I was talking to him on the drive up here. I'm like, or down here, whichever way. It's like, yo, man, you just got robbed by the government.
Oh yeah,
the government came in and robbed you basically. I mean, they just called out all illicit gains, so you never see any of that again, right?
No.
All right.
Well, when they came to my house, I had $170,000 in my closet, and I had a lawyer try to get it back. And at one point, they gave back like $10,000 because we said it, belonged to someone else, or like it was at the time I was married, so my wife had claimed it through her working or something, and I thought that was like a thing to like almost like fishing. So we didn't even go and get it.
Yeah.
Oh, to see if they could get you to come
like
physically there.
Yeah.
No, like the lawyer got it, and I kept telling her I was at that point already incarcerated, and so she didn't even want to go get it because she thought it was like some sort of setup.
Yeah.
Like if she accepted it or something. So, but yeah, no, they absolutely they come in and they hook it and take everything, and even when I was actually like taken into custody, I already used the word Rolex, so I had a Rolex on, and they just couldn't wait to get it off, and that's long gone. You know what I mean?
Oh, you don't get that when you get out of. They don't have to take your stuff like.
Oh no,
that's really.
Yeah. They keep it all, dude.
Yeah.
So it was during this time that I guess weed was becoming legal in California, or it's
beginning.
It became right,
Mm-hmm.
and
it's a difference because it was medical, and you had to go get a medical card, and so very So I was much before that, and then that I was on the cusp of when that started too. Is when I decided to go like way out, out of state with it, and so part of the reason to go out of state is because. Let's say hypothetically I was paying like somewhere around $3,000, and the price I could get out of state would be like $5,000.
Yeah.
So it's a huge markup.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was making just tons of cash, right? Maybe not as much as whatever, but maybe $1 million a month profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enough to just like cruise and always have money at my house. And, like, if I felt like just going out and getting something, and then you just don't pay attention to like the price tags when in normal life, if you like a shirt, you're like, well, how much is it? And this one, I was like, no, this is cool. I'm just gonna get it.
I mean, we were saying that about the contractor lifestyle at a far lower level. I mean, so yeah.
When you were doing all this, like before the heat was on you, right? When things were kind of cruising and did you was it stressful? Like, did you, because it's illicit activity, that it's a possibility to get incarcerated, or maybe you're dealing with some guys where, it's not inconceivable that violence could happen at some point. Were you stressed out, or are you just cool with that kind of stuff in general? Like, you know what I mean?
It's almost like, I don't know if it's the correct word, is like a sociopath, right? Like, none of these things affect me, right?
Yeah.
So I can go into like the worst neighborhood that like maybe a beach, like white guy like myself wouldn't go into, like a black neighborhood in Compton or South Central where it doesn't even register in my head, and I would go to those places, build relationships, and make lots of money there, and then I could go to someone else and say, oh, from now on, like, you're going to go over there and still make the money and, build these things. And I probably, when I look back at it, probably worked with like almost every gang out there.
Yeah.
Because I was oblivious, and none of this really, like, I don't know if I carried myself as I thought I was like some sort of like mob boss, or it was just came easy for me to interact with these people. I mean, it could be, motorcycle biker clubs. It could be, big ones that run like multiple states. It could be like local, hardheads, and I dealt with them all, and
well, maybe it's that they were about their money, and you were a good businessman, so it's like they're not incentivized to jack you or whatever.
Sure.
Right? Like,
no, the other thing is the incentivized to rob somebody. I would oftentimes leave it with someone on a credit line.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there's always those people that, this happened or that happened, and then they don't have all the money,
Well, it could be one of the things I was explaining to Aaron about how we met in here is that you just got an awesome vibe, man. So, we're chopping it up right over there. We filmed the Fresh Out episode on a table right over there. And so I was asking Big Her because I was putting out the Instagram message. I was like, hey, man, that guy was super cool. I want to make sure I mention that Redondo spot. And that's how I recognized you from his videos. I'm like, oh, shit, man, that was the nicest guy in the world just sitting there.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Likewise. Like, yeah, it's like awesome. So maybe that was just a vibe. Because Aaron and I could be considered dangerous people. But when you start vibing with somebody, you're like, oh, man, it's almost like you can.
I guess you could say a chameleon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to being able to adapt to your environment, but it's funny to say that. There was one time where I had like this, there was times where early on in what I did, I would say I was like more hands-on, right? But I still moved in ways where like, if I had, 800, 500, whatever pounds, that I wouldn't have those at my own house where I slept.
Yeah.
But I would pay my friend's rent.
Yeah.
And even if he had like wife and kids, we would, do the back, garage or something like where it was kind of hidden. And I would pay the bills and I would access that property. Oftentimes I would get orders come in like on a Tuesday. And I say, okay, well, I'm not going to see you today, but I'll see you tomorrow. And what I would do is I hit that place first thing in the morning, and I gear up to go see like 10 people loaded down with however many, that this guy's getting 10, this guy's getting 20, 32, whatever it may be. And then I just bink, and then go home. And so there was one dude that he was like a Compton Crip, and he was an old school. He was a veteran as well from I want to say like the Vietnam War.
Damn.
And he was like super buff. He worked out every single day, and he was a nice guy. But at one point he had got busted with just a little bit of weed, right? And so he was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to like county jail for a little while." And I told him, I made such good money with him that let's delegate it to like someone underneath him. And he recruited his son, and so. This is one particular individual that he would always have his money as opposed to me leaving it with a credit. And so his kid started off giving me the money. And then before you know it, I'm like fronting him. Fronting him meaning he doesn't have the money no more. I'm giving him a credit line. Now all of a sudden he messes that up. And then so now his dad eventually gets out. And I'm like, yo, your son ran up the bill, bro. And now you owe me. And so at one point, he agreed to it, like initially in the beginning, like just to add a few hundred, actually, this guy's, he ended up getting smoked. Somebody shot him.
Oh, man.
He's a rest in peace, or this individual. He's a cool dude, but, so anyways, I was telling him we're going to add like, we call it like $1 or something to each pound, 2 pounds, or 200. And eventually, we're in his kitchen, and he always had a lot of people over, and I would tell him like, I'm not cool with that. Like nobody's supposed to be here when I come through, and everyone knows it's the white boy, this truck that comes in, and and so anyways, one day I go in there and I'm going to do business with him, and he like snatches up all the weed and it's like, fuck all that debt, I'm not paying it, and I'm keeping this too. And even though there's like a room full of like hard heads and I'm not in the best situation and I'm by myself, I was like, bro, like time out, like no, this isn't, you're not gonna fucking do that, you're not keeping my shit, and you're not like not paying me. I'll work with you on the debt, but like no. And so but nobody ever like robbed me to my face. They didn't say, oh, this guy beat me, or the cops did this, or I shit, you know what I mean? Some bullshit ass stories that most of the time I'd have to check out, but I don't know where we went with it, but
that's all good, man. Yeah, it's all good stories, man.
So did you, you did this, you were at this for a while. Did you have it in the back of your head that like inevitably you were going to get caught, or did you think I'm going to get away with this forever?
There was very much like inevitably, like high probability. So, and things in life, like I don't have kids, and part of that was because I knew what I was doing, and I didn't want to bring like, I didn't feel it was the right situation to, bring kids in that, because I'm like a big kid, like a big dope dealer, you know what I mean? And so to some degree, yeah. And then like, my significant other, I would teach her what to look for in preparation that this would happen. And when I maneuvered my business, I oftentimes had like seven or more cell phones. So I knew there was the potentially of being tracked, right? And then I had one phone, which, man, if I had about one phone and all my crew on it, I would have been so like way more safe, because I had this one phone that was encrypted, and I call it PGP encryption, and it was on the old devices, which were they were for that moment in time, but nobody uses them now as a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And it was like email to email, and it had no microphone, it had no camera.
Yeah, these tracking devices that we're all carrying right now. Yeah.
And so, and then it went to a server in another country, and then every hour that server would scrub it, and nobody's name's connected to them. You know what I mean? And it's all like, right now, even us being in this room, we're using audio, and I would be in there like dope dealing in my living room, just bing, 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 complete silence.
Yeah.
So if the man were listening, they wouldn't even know, like, what is he fucking even doing in there?
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I'm maneuvering on this phone where I'm completely, like, no identity, Yeah,
we know a bit about how cell phones are used to target people as part of what we were into, but like what you're describing, that PGP encryption, that's a big deal, because like that's how dudes do illicit stuff on the dark web too. So that PGP, it's a key that you exchange, and so even if they got midstream of that comms, they can't unscramble that really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and all this is good info, because I mean, who knows? One day you might want whole milk, and you can't get fucking whole milk anymore. Like, or you want farm fresh eggs, and people should not. When people hear this type of stuff out there, I mean, we have a lot of folks that listen to this that are like special ops dudes, but for the normal folks out there, don't discount this shit. There's nothing saying that you won't find yourself needing to. Well,
to your point, the average person, I think they hear stuff about, like, we're interested in that, your trade craft, right? We're like, that's cool. Well, most people are like, well, if you're not up to no good, then you shouldn't care who's listening to your phone calls. And it's like, no, because they shift what no good means over time. And as they continue to come at your civil liberties and stuff, there's going to come a point where something that's okay to do right now is not going to be okay to do in the future.
It may not be okay.
Yeah.
And always, you're going to not be so happy.
I would have like almost like board meetings.
Yeah.
And one time I actually did get like a dry erase board and gave the full thing, right? But in those meetings, sometimes we would all pop the batteries out, put the phones in different rooms, and then oftentimes even use hand signals. In the room. And people would like we're just in there doing all these hand signals, and it's just the weirdest thing, People are like, man, we're in like a hotel room or our own room like this, and
telling the wife we should learn sign language for multiple reasons. I mean, just across the farm, if she's like 4 acres over there, I can just feed the horse kind of thing.
Did you do all the sign stuff in prison too? Is that
not so much?
You weren't in that kind of prison really, where there was
not so much that, but I guess to some degree maybe when we're looking out for guards.
Yeah.
But even the sign language, where I lost my train of thought where I was going with it, but
you were talking about having a board meeting with your guys and.
Oh yeah, even if you jump into a car, because all those cars have that
OnStar,
OnStar, all that.
A lot of them, like if there's 2 of us and we jump into a car and we all go to lunch together, like we don't talk in those cars, and a lot of a lot of things. Oh, and now I remember what I was saying. So even when I would communicate with my wife, sometimes instead of like I would, if it was something really serious, I would drive her to the beach. And then go to the beach and then have a conversation with no phones. Or I would like write it on a piece of paper. So that's how like gnarly it was. So I did know that I was going to get, busted.
So let me ask you this. This is like another thing we're kind of interested in. We come from a line of work where you work in small teams, and the quality of the people you work with basically means everything to you. So you got guys that were working for you, employees basically, but in a very high risk type of job, How did you, was there something you looked for in people to determine you could trust them? Or how did you say, okay, this is a guy who I can give millions of dollars to and put my freedom in his hands, with this tradecraft? Like, how did you select people?
I guess in the beginning it was kind of just trying to, build my clientele and in a way just not so much like vet people unless they're like super, mental health, but like I said, like gang members and other people, like I would just think about the money, I guess, I think quite a bit of it came down to myself having like a money addiction,
Yeah, you were definitely motivated by the bag, huh?
Yeah. And so, there was even a time where I had these, like, I think it was like a Vietnamese crew here in like Long Beach, and I was trying to solicitate to do business now that my plane could go to like New York. And this gentleman had connections to like all these Vietnamese like gang members in New York. And I eventually told him, okay, it's on. I'm going to bring your guys, some kush. And I didn't even know them other than he's like, oh, my cousin's phone number is, this is his number, right? And so I'm not meeting him in the sense, like, I don't know what this person looks like. And I agreed to drop them, and he didn't even like really request this many, but it's only worth it at some point to go big, right? Yeah. So I took 200 pounds, right? And at that point, I want to say it was like for sure like 5,000 times 200, right? And so like whatever that was, it was a substantial amount, and it was basically like sight unseen, like I hope the guy pays me, you know what I mean? And so I navigated like this whole drop, this particular first time over was I had, there's a lot of East Indian that work in Canada, and it was an East Indian big rig driver, and he came in on the East Coast side of New York, and he was talking with a thick accent, and I never even spoke to him before, and I was like, oh man, go here, go there, and I'm telling this guy and to rent a van, and don't go over the bridges because like the van, like all this like like fucking how to maneuver 200 pounds around. And then I had a guy, I flew in from Seattle, and he posted up in a hotel, and he was also had clients out there, but yet he's like, we call it today like trapping, like working out of a hotel with 200 pounds in a parking lot with people I never met, and I just have their phone number, and at that point, if they ran off with it and didn't pay me, it falls on me to then pay the person that gave it to me on a credit. Yeah, and so it was a lot of risk taking.
So you just consider that like a business risk, kind of like an investment almost that could.
So it's funny when I say how I look at it, people like, oh, okay. So the way I look at things is each individual is like, let's just call them Starbucks. Okay. Right? And so I'm going to put a Starbucks with you in Long Beach. And if you tell me you got robbed and we lose the money, then, hey, you know what? I tried to open a Starbucks in Long Beach and it didn't work.
Bad neighborhood.
I gave one to you and you're fucking rocking and rolling, and now I have a Starbucks here that works and I have a Starbucks there. Yeah. Because at some point, and I did have strong-arm people show up if somebody wouldn't pay me, right? But there's times where if someone didn't pay you, you could drive yourself crazy just like thinking about it. So consciously, you have to learn to let it go and say, I'm going to just, make my profit. And at some point, I told myself, I myself have a loss prevention department. And so I operated with all of this terminology to help like myself, like if you ran off with 50,000 and I'm gonna go home tonight going, oh my god,
while you're looking at a million.
And so I'm just like, you know what, fuck it, like it's whatever.
Did that, I guess, methodology or mindset of letting it go, which is a very like high mindset to have, like that takes a while to achieve that mindset, do you think that helped you like make it through getting pinched, like doing the prison
absolutely
time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because like I was the last one to get caught on my case, and of course they're like they're trying to break you in that moment when they take you down to fingerprint you and take your pictures, and now they swab your mouth. I mean, they got you, bro. You know what I'm saying? And so in that moment, the guy's like throwing one-liners the whole time, like try to break you, you know? And I just throw bullshit towards him because I'm like, I'm not cool with these people.
Nah.
You know? And so he told me at one point, like, oh, like, so-and-so was in here with an upset stomach and like crying, and you seem to act like he would basically was showing how I was like, you know, like none of that shit bothered me.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. The day is here, you know? And of course they do all that stuff. Like when you ride down to the building, there's a dude in the car, and the whole time he's like, nobody knows you're busted yet. You can help yourself. And I'm just like, no, you know, and I would throw back sarcastic remarks. He eventually would just try to use my things against me, like, oh yeah, that one too, huh? And like he would tell me the things in my life that he already knew, you know, and try to like reinforce what I tell him or whatever, you know. And so and then it was even like, hey, are you hungry? You want us to go get you some hamburgers? And I'm like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like,
bad copy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you know, developing, you know, some of that that way of thinking, or the way of like helping my mind relate to negative issues like that, you know, definitely helped. Like being incarcerated too, you know. But there's a lot of things that happen while incarcerated that are very much like being in high school when you have the cool kids and then the nerds, because in prison it's a race. So it's almost the same shit as the cool kids and the lames, and so you're always having to deal with, you know, the rumors amongst the various individuals. So like, for instance, a dude, he owed me $1,400, and he was white in prison, and him and I eventually got into it. And then the Mexican Southsiders came to me, and they offered for me to like join with them, because they thought that the way the whites were handling this person's debt, they weren't like doing it appropriately, and they knew I was solid. They had already like looked me up or whatever, and I had already been in that institution for a while. So eventually through that, I did actually just, you can submit to your case manager, and you can move into like, oh, this is my homie's cell, instead of being with like a pedophile or something. You know what I'm saying? So they let you move. So I eventually moved, and once I moved, then all the whites wouldn't look me in the eye no more when I passed by them. You know what I mean? Because now I'm on with the homies, and like I would even play softball. We had like the White Sox, and the homies have the Dodgers, the blacks have the Black Sox. And so because of those like racial divides, it's very much like the high school, you know? And so once I, you know, exiled from, you know, the whites or whatever, people at first, you know, they didn't want to like look at me. And then it took a while for everyone to come around, because, you know, I still would work out with some of those guys in the, you know, we have a weight pile, and eventually people get over it, you know. But so even dealing with some of that, like, and then when you receive your sentence, and, you know, like mine was just under 12 years, when they took me back from the courtroom, you know, the guards, you know, they're asking, hey, do you want to go to solitary confinement, you know? Or
like PC, like, so get you out of the...
No, just because they know that you felt like that's a hard day, you know, like you just...
Oh, you need some time or something to chill.
Like you're going to go cry or something. You know what I'm saying?
Not go to solitary to get locked up in there, just to go for a minute to...
Yeah, just to be alone and fucking, you know, because you just get like so much time, you know?
Yeah, it's a big kick.
And I was like, no, I'm
But yours could have been way worse.
It's a pretty awesome story. My friend died during COVID.
Oh, shit.
And but he was like my childhood best friend, and he was like a hardcore like Christian. When we were growing up, he was an atheist. I don't know if I feel like I told you this story, but anyways, my friend was the one. He emailed Herc and was like, hey, my friend, he just got out, and he's got this unique story, and he doesn't carry himself like these people that you think that are in this industry. And so anyways, his name is Sean, and so he was the one that emailed Herc, and then Herc said, he reached back, and so once I spoke to him, I was actually still in the halfway house, and my friend, he was watching Herc while I was in prison, because he's like a square, and he wanted to understand.
How do I
Want to
survive?
know like what you were.
What's he experiencing?
Yeah,
right?
no, I think that's probably why a lot of people watch it. You know.
Yeah, and so I talked to Herc, and I said, "Hey, man, like I fucking seen you guys on just like park benches, and that's not where it's at." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, man, like I'll bring over. What are we gonna do? Like come to my house, and I still at the time when I got out, even though the government had seized a lot of stuff, my wife had my house over there, so I told him come through and let's make it better. Let's bring some Porsches and talk this and that instead of just sitting on a park bench. Like I don't know if anybody
you
wants
were
to watch.
thinking like an artist.
And so at some point that's when they edited in some Dana White thing, and then they did and I tried to push for more of my own. I have my own court stuff.
Yeah, so since we're talking about it, I like that. But like when it had the because I wasn't sure if it was like stock photos or something, so I asked him, I'm like, oh, that's all real shit from the case.
It is,
and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
I made a point to save everything. Like I told my lawyer,
you had like a stack of CD-ROMs. And shit.
Yeah, so I always envision like going on like. American Greed, or just anything like these A&E
they're always doing
and stuff, and so
because that's like discovery, right? Like you have to have access to everything they're going to use against you, right?
Totally.
And then I didn't know, but you can keep all that. Okay.
Yeah.
That might make some sick art too, man. Like a lot of the stuff where you like graffitied over things.
I was thinking at
cool
some point
shit.
I do have some where the FBI took pictures from a very far away.
Telephone.
And so and then lots of the audio too. So I don't know. There could even be like somehow like an exhibit where you can listen to the audio and maybe But I probably should at some point do some art with that stuff.
Well, turning towards positive stuff. So I was asking. We took a short break to replace some batteries, and I was asking you during that break if you thought your propensity for risk taking, back in what was at that time considered an illicit trade, once you turned your life, I guess, towards a positive, how do you feel like that helped you? Perhaps like overcome the fear some guys have with starting a new life or starting a new journey.
I don't know, because I think I was like preparing myself before I left prison. I painted in like an area they refer to as the hobby shop for probably at least 6 years, and that was like 7 days a week. Other than one time, going to the shoe for it's a little while, right?
What'd you catch the shoe for?
It was actually because I didn't do anything. My cellmate was like selling dope on the yard, and everybody tells on each other on the yard. So one day during a census count, they were like they yelled out count time, and they just like hit our cell and they search us, and he had like a cigarette lighter and like all kinds of different drugs in his like underwear. He had a pocket made. But because in the moment he didn't say like it's all mine, and I'm just sitting there like I get searched too, and I'm just hanging out waiting, and they take me as well, and then they have to do an investigation, and eventually he just agrees that it's all his, and he gets shipped out.
Okay.
All right.
And I go back, but so I did what do you call it when it's perfect? Exemplary. Through my whole time, I never once got in trouble.
Hell yeah!
How'd you get art supplies in there? Is it something they facilitate, or can you buy it with your?
So that you have these like people that are called case managers, and they come in and evaluate you every couple months. And this one tells me that I'm not like programming, and programming is what they refer to as like taking some sort of schooling or courses, and so. He's like, you have to program, and they want you to do that because you have these. They categorize you as a point system on your level of severity as an individual, and the more you're programming, you can bring your custody points down, and you can go to like a camp, right? And so I decided I guess I'll have to program or whatever, right? I'll just, I'll try to figure this out and participate. And they had an oil painting class, and so I signed up for that. And then turned out the guy was like not a cool cat that was the teacher. You know what I'm saying? He was not somebody we wanted to be around. You know. Yeah. So, but long story short, they had like a list where you could submit your name, and there was a waiting list, and you get a locker, and they had 3 different things. You had a paint locker or like a paint and drawing. And then they had a leather crafting, like you could make your own leather stuff. And then they had a ceramic thing, right? So cool. During like regular like prison, hours, they had, you could go to this hobby shop and maybe spend 3 or 4 hours in there. And then the way you would purchase your stuff is you would give the guard your identification, and he'll give you a catalog. And then you're going to go out and fill out a little form, and you're only allowed to spend like $360 a month. And you can order art supplies from a company that is called Blick that a lot of people use still out here.
That's a pretty good amount of. I mean,
the only messed up thing is that 360 is for all the inmates are allowed to spend that for their groceries. So I had to like, do I get like art supplies or do I get like groceries? So oftentimes people that didn't have money, I would have money from the outside sent, and then they would buy the whole 360 in art supplies. And then I would still like load up on groceries.
Yeah. Before we get off the prison stuff, something occurred to me to ask you. So Cody and I, our whole adult life, we were in an institution, the military, but a very specific thing. And I think about, not in it anymore. I've been out I retired like 9 years ago now or something, right? But every single day, there's something that happens in my day that I respond to it in like a way an institutionalized way that I've been trained to type of thing. Or I think about that time that I was in that institution. What's it like for you? Now, are you an institutionalized person, or are you completely, are there aspects of you being incarcerated that linger with you?
Oh, of course, yeah. And unfortunately, there is, aspects. And when I was like leaving there, I would always say I always wanted to communicate with like my friends on the outside, because I don't want to like eventually like get out of prison and catch up with a friend over lunch, and then our whole conversation is fucking prison this, prison that, and so like I didn't want to do that, but as a painter, and because of my crime, and people think it's like intriguing and interesting, right? And so I talk about the prison aspect or the backstory quite a bit, because a lot of people who even collect my art, they collect it because of my backstory. And so but as far as like, what was the end part of the question?
No, that you answered it. If these things from the institution linger, but that what you just said is interesting too, because it's like it might get annoying, that you talk about it, or people prompt you to, but you could also think of it like, you're a personable guy, you're nice to talk to, you're like a cool dude, like and people are going to connect with that.
Sure.
And so then that gives them access to this part of reality, part of the world that they wouldn't otherwise
be able to. Pretty scary part, too.
Well, maybe, but also like they can look in through you and know. It's just people want to know about, I don't know, there's certain type of people like me that want to go and see everything and experience everything, even if, like, I don't want to go to prison, but it's interesting, like, to meet somebody, so... I'm sure it gets annoying.
In several war zones.
People same thing with war stuff.
True.
People are real hesitant to ask. Because there's some challenging questions like, well, have you ever killed anybody? And you're like, yeah, tons. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not a good thing. War's the worst thing in the world. So there's nothing worse. But you can talk about it if you went there.
Yeah, we can discuss it in this safe setting now.
Like that. So the art, it took off. It started to take off in prison. You obviously, like, you figured out you had a talent for it, right? Like,
so I started trying to not so much like read books, and I read books. I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to read art books in prison, because I had a person. They had a locker next to me, and he was like full like art center college sort of individual.
Like
and,
trained.
Yeah, and so he would always criticize me pretty hardcore too.
That's annoying.
And so he would always say, and repeat things on what he learned in school, and then he would tell me I need to read art books, and then I would say, like, in my mind, I would refer to a book called The Outlier, right? And so
like Malcolm Gladwell thing.
Yeah, and so it's basically it's learning through experience and putting in like 10,000 hours.
Reps,
and so I just thought, like, occasionally, of course, I want to learn, right? But I was just going to learn through me just pushing myself.
Yeah.
So even from an example of that is, let's say you come today and you just get a brand new hobby locker, and then you're like, oh, I'm getting my canvas, and so I've already been there 3 years, and I'm already like got through. These people, they start out as a beginner, of course, and they think like, oh, it's done, and there's so much more to do to their piece. Like maybe they did it in like 1 layer. And it needs to be like 3 layers, and then, but they don't get all that, or they see that there's such a struggle to develop and hone your skills that they won't follow through. So before you know it, like the guy never shows up, and then I start doing shit like, hey bro, give me your combination, and let me get something. Let me use your locker, and I start spreading out, and now I have like 3 lockers, and I have like I can do like big 4-foot paintings. Yeah. At one point, the guard came, and I had these things that are called easels that hold the actual canvas. And I had these custom ones made in the inmate made for me in the wood shop, and the guards like fully just smashed them out and broke them, and was like
some Shawshank Redemption.
Man, I thought you were about to tell me the guards were all stoked on your art and it made everybody cool.
they would be. They did do that as well. It was very fucking Dr. Heckle, right? But
fucking terrible.
Dude, the guy, like, I went back to his office, and you could see, because they always, like, you could look to get various things to give him your ID and check something out. And he had all my easels back there, and I was like, man, what's that all about, And it's not fair. You have all these custom one, and all these like lames had fucking, the ones that they give you or that you can buy that are like, little tiny ones.
Yeah.
But, it just seemed wrong to like take things that are perfectly good and like just break them. And
that's a metaphor for the government, period, man. I mean, I look at what you were doing previously as just like delivering medicine to people that couldn't get it legally, like some Robin Hood shit, man. And the government broke that.
Exactly.
So I mean, so the breaking of the easel is almost like it's them also trying to break something that's working well for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is that mindset about? Why do we pay taxes for that?
It's so weird too. Even like my pre-sentencing. They would come in. At one point, I eventually had to tell like a lieutenant that came in just to check on our pod, like, something's not right. I started keeping track of it. These guards would come into my cell every single day and search and take anything extra. Like if you're allowed to have 1 pair of shorts, I'd be like, hey man, let me get an extra pair, and I would buy stuff and get and collect things or whatever. And they would just come in and take it all and take and just take and take. And then finally, I was like, what's going on? Like, why we're in like a pod, right? Why every day these dudes, sometimes twice a day, a dude comes in when they buzz him in, and he goes right to my room, step out, searches my room, takes all my stuff, leaves. Another guy comes back fucking an hour later and does it again, like every fucking day. And at some point I was like, why do you guys come just for me?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I was doing crafty stuff then too. They had like a number when you go to call out, on the payphones. So I would take an inmate and say that, I'll give you money. Let me use your thing so they can't record me.
Yeah.
So they were recording. If you were fighting your case, now all of a sudden I'm on your phone and like, well, who is this guy? Or,
Did you ever figure out what their deal was with you?
No. I thought maybe it was to try to break me down, really, because they wanted me to like cooperate. And then also, I think they thought maybe I had a cell phone because I wasn't using my own phone ever.
Yeah.
Like I would almost never call out because I was bound to get myself like in my conversation would be like all about like my case,
Yeah.
The whole thing was not to talk about it because then, so I got denied bail. And I tried to do what's called a bond appeal, and I came back. And through that whole time, I was trying to explain over codes to how to collect money that I had. And I was like, oh, I did a remodel on so-and-so's house. And so
I poured a lot of gravel.
Yeah. So when I went in on that bond appeal, they had like multiple, lead agents. And this guy, they all just said, this guy's super high risk. He fucking travels with cell phones. He travels with cash. And do not let him go. And so the judge said, I'm going to think about it. But he came back and he said, no bail. And but I forget what led into that. But
did you decide when you were in that you were going to make a living doing art, or did it, was it just a hobby while you were in, or did you see like all this that you've built? Could you see it while you were in there?
No, I did. I guess that's one thing I was leaning our previous. I was thinking of when we were talking earlier is that. So I did start to like. Not study art in the form of technique of how to paint, but I did like try to evaluate things like branding and then like maybe collections and series and those sort of things. And I originally, when I came up with a name and to do this whole Monopoly thing, I was only going to do maybe like 20 paintings, and it was going to be like a series. And then it got to the point where I just thought it was like fun and interesting to take that character and put him into those precarious environments and situations. And so that would just began. I just kept going with it, right?
Yeah.
But I did know that. So every Wednesday we were allowed to do what's called a mail out, and I started slowly. I would almost sometimes set a goal how many paintings I could get from like Wednesday to Wednesday. And like, oh, I got out 3. And then I started counting like in a journal before I made it home. Like, oh, I have like 65 paintings.
Nice.
Now I have 80.
That you were mailing home.
Yeah, to my dad.
Yeah.
And then I was like naming them and numbering them. And I started at least saying that that's a bank account.
Yeah, there you go.
And like, hey, even if these things are worth like $1,000 and I have 70 of them, I have 70 grand. And so, when I was then in a halfway house, and I had never used social media. Some of my family had, made one for my art like before I got out. It was like something for me to kind of interact with, so I wouldn't be so prison when I got out. I would like email pictures home or mail my art, and they would put it on like Instagram and that Facebook or whatever. And so an art gallery sent me a message. And in the moment, I thought the art was like so expensive, and so I sent him this price. And then he was like, it's cool, but my particular gallery, it's a little bit high. And then the following day, instead of like just messaging him back, I just took the initiative to like call the place. I was in the halfway house, and so I called him and like introduced myself and told him about my cannabis background and like asked him like, is this something that like I tell people, as a painter, or and we thought, it's not a bad crime, and it's kind of cool, and so why not, like feel free to bring it into my art. And so I eventually went to his place and brought him like 60 paintings the first time I ever saw him.
Nice.
And I said basically it was like a form of power of attorney, and just like I don't really even care, don't really have to call and say I want this much for this, and like people get stubborn and they want this price. I just was like move my product.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me to come in and live paint on like the day like after Black Friday. And I already had people that pre-purchased that week that were already wanting to take pictures and autographs. And so I went just boom, like out of kind of like manifesting being in the hobby shop, talking amongst other inmates, like, oh, I'm going to be an artist. And even so much so to where like another inmate would go, oh, if you're at a a fucking art night. You know, you need to dress different. You don't want to be like the regular guy. You're the artist.
Yeah.
It's like you're the rock star.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about
branding
these things.
too, right? Yeah.
And this poor guy, man, he's out now, but I felt so fucking bad. He had got a 30-year sentence.
Yeah.
And he had 6 kids. And he was like, just like leading me up because he knew I was going home and like he still had quite some time to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Man.
But through COVID, he was able to get out early.
Oh,
That's good.
Yeah. With just an ankle monitor, though. So he's super bummed, though. He has 7 years of an ankle monitor.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Can you imagine just
No.
an ankle monitor for 7 years?
Man.
I cannot.
Yeah,
imagine.
he feels almost
Wow.
like it's not even like that great at the end of the day, but it's better than prison. But
Yeah, but not
still,
by that much.
that's a lot of years
That's
for an
wild.
ankle monitor. It's not like, hey, you got it on for 6
And
months.
that means like you stay in the house.
well,
or
you
there's
got
like a limited-
you get permission for your job.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
but other than that, yeah.
Yeah, work, be in the house.
And
That's
I think maybe you might be able to go to a movie, but you have a curfew and all that. You know, but yeah. There's
Yeah.
not much moving around.
Well, I mean, there's not a guy coming in stealing your extra underwear either.
Yeah.
So there is.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, exactly. And the guards are so petty sometimes. You know, like my gosh, you know, just to really like.
Are you aware of the Stanford experiment?
I'm not.
So basically, early 70s, late 60s,
Yeah, something like that.
Stanford runs this experiment where they have 2 groups of students. One group of students they call the prisoners, the other group of students they call the prison guards. And now
okay.
it's going to be observed over a period of time.
Okay.
Well, almost instantaneously, the students who have been designated as prison guards start to become dickheads.
Yeah.
And this, I forgot how long the
Power tripping.
Yeah, they shut it off.
Yeah, they
early because they fucking inhabited that role.
Yeah.
And then they started to think of the other students as like actual
right.
prisoners or whatever, people that had.
Wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, human nature is a trip.
Man.
So what's
I was about to ask. You asked.
What's the future?
Yeah.
Like, what do you see? I mean, you've got 2 art galleries going.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, what do you picture for the future of your brand or your art?
Yeah. So I'm approaching like almost 5 years that I've been out of federal prison, and I've done like exemplary that I don't go out and do illegal stuff, let's just say, right? So I don't get myself in trouble, but so I've just been like painting and painting and painting, right? Just knowing that paintings equal money, and so I just keep it's almost a form of me printing my own money to some degree,
I feel the same way about swinging a fucking hammer on that farm, man. I'm like, every hammer swing is gonna be there for the rest of my life.
Well, we get into a bunch of wild stuff on our show a lot. Like we talk about like alchemy, and people think alchemy is turning base metals into precious metals, but that's not really what it is. It's transmuting the human will. You know what I mean? And but what like you just said, it's like a form of alchemy. Like you're basically creating money out of your brains. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And I have my own printer too. And so if I have an image that's, let's say, a hot piece, like a home run, I call it, I can run prints of that. Nice. And essentially that is like printing money.
That's printing money.
I just printed 5 of them and they're worth $5,000, and I have like,
dude, you figured it out.
Yeah.
you had a good hustle before, but this one might be better because
for sure. So like as like what I want to achieve, or like I often call it, like I try to forward think and like see myself in various things, and I've had obstacles thus far. So being out the 5 years, I've had numerous obstacles, but the whole time I just want to like evolve and grow as a painter to where even just the price point is something that is like, oh my gosh, those are this much money, and like highly collectible and in value, and right. And so my goal is to, like, let's say if I make art now and somebody buys it for $2,000, that even just on my own behalf, like 5 years from now, that piece that's $2,000 is now, it's like, whatever it might be, at least 10,000 or 20.
Yeah.
And through some of the ways I'm kind of like edging myself towards that is I keep thinking that organically, maybe a documentary or my story will somehow, be on a scale where people can be at home and watch millions of it, and in that way, by that type of impact on, eyes on it, then I can, also gain more stature and more, like a fan base, notoriety. And that's so like what I make my art for now is, one, because like it pays the bills, but also because I really dig when people like it means something to them and then they like it. I get, that's part of it. But also just like knowing that, like achieving what I'm going after. And if I can just like keep going, and like I said, I see other artists that are above me, right? And I go to their functions and interact and observe and just try to say like, wow, like this particular person is like really crushing it, like they're selling way more than I am. They're selling for way more price than I am. So I'm like, how do I do those various things? So one is I think now I did have a conversation with a group, and we will probably be doing like the documentary and hiring people to do reenactments and
nice.
And so cool. It will be pretty cool, but it's not like already going somewhere. Yeah. It'll be where you privately like send it around and see if somebody wants to purchase it or whatever ends up happening. But at this point, I thought like I've had other people talk about it, and I always thought it's more like the movie Blow or the movie American Gangster, and that, like it should be done like big or not at all.
Yeah.
And so I've had people hit me up that said, oh, I have like this small whatever, and, they're willing to do it. And I told them, nah, I'm okay, And so it's kind of like, I think I look at it as if you're a musician and you're getting a record deal. Are you going to go with like the dude who's like got his like basement record label? Or are you going to go with the big dogs? And so I was just kind of holding out at this point, but my goal is, so now I have two art galleries. One, kind of functions as an art studio and a creative space. And I also invite other artists, that maybe don't have resources to like spread their wings. And, maybe if they're doing it in their apartment, and they can't get paint all over, they could come to my place and, utilize my space. And, it's kind of like, I think Andy Warhol had the same sort of thing, like lots of people.
Yeah, cool.
And so I don't always like to be in this place by myself. So it is also like a retail art gallery. And then I did end up just grabbing another space in downtown LA because
cool
the art started growing. And so I do even think I'll these galleries, I call them the vault, because the property here was once upon a time, it was a bank, and we have the leftover vault. So I probably foresee doing even what I call like installations in other brands, like a clothing store and dispensary.
Yeah.
And that we call them, I'll call them like a vault installation, right? But it'll be like all sorts of artists.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's a way of like, if I look back to my dope dealing ways, I'm just moving product again. And now, it's like when I would sell, like, let's say it's like a Kush cannabis, right? Now I'm selling, this artist and that artist, and I'm just dishing them out, and I'm not only selling my own, but I'm the art plug.
Yeah, there you go.
Shit, man.
The art plug
is the art plug. It's nice.
So I dabbed into both aspects. I'm a painter. I sell my own art, and it goes to galleries, and then I feature and sell other people's art, which is pretty cool in itself too. Sometimes I could just like, it's almost like backwards hustling, trying to help other artists.
Yeah.
But something about it, in the end, like I'm just here, I'm doing it. But some artists, they only function about themselves,
Yeah.
Well, even when it comes to like them tagging themselves.
You got a mind for business, I think, that you need to, that you're going to apply one way or the other. So might as well apply it to art.
And people with that mind understand that everybody's got to eat.
Yeah.
So
I'm yet to find out, but there is a very nefarious business within the art community too.
Oh shit!
I completely.
Yeah,
Up on the upper echelon.
I heard about some
yeah.
money laundering via art.
absolutely.
I mean, I've said it out loud numerous times. I think high-end art is fucking money.
Yeah, there's some money. There's some weird.
It is.
Yeah,
for sure it is. So, like, you can right now say we have a painting over off to the side. We can just, maybe even like insure it or whatever and say it's any price.
You can establish whatever value you want.
Yeah. You could, have given me like $50 and now we say it's 100.
Yeah. I mean, it's fiat currency. If you got to
money launder, it's a pretty good little way to do that, I think. That's what they were accusing old Wild Man Hunter of doing.
Yeah, right.
He's absolutely doing that.
Yeah. They're like $300,000.
People don't even understand that he's doing that.
Yeah.
Well, one lady just recently got a job after she bought his art.
Of course.
Oh, what, like a job with the government?
Yeah. You pay $500K for that one.
Well, when you say stuff like that, people think you're like making a political statement, and you're some. I'm like, no, that's not why I'm saying that.
No,
I'm just saying
I'm apolitical.
Yeah.
No, those guys are absolutely professional money launderers.
100%. Yes. They are
professional.
Our last gig was money laundering. We would do it through technology. We would say this technology needs to occur, and this private company is going to make it, so tax dollars pay for the tech, which then the government uses, but then that private company is allowed to sell the tech back to the people once it's no longer really a classified thing. Think like GPS, for example.
The internet.
They're selling a tech back to the people that the people's money paid to develop.
Yeah.
It's like, that's money laundering.
They stay paid, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it says it on the Monopoly box. The bank never runs out of money.
Yeah.
And we were digging your Lucifer painting. That one's one of my favorites. And then, of course, the one with the Michelangelo, the Leonardo quote. That's another favorite. Well, shit, man. This has been a beautiful...
that one here. If you want me to grab it, we could read it.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, give me a second.
All right, cool.
Let me see if we can encrypt part of it here. So it says, I crossed out Leonardo's name, right? Because I think this is probably one of his things, potentially. And I put my name, and it says, Leonardo is an artist who needs to be deciphered. We know that he liked to amaze and to intrigue, willingly playing the part of a magician.
Yeah, that's magic, man.
That's magic.
Turning your art into money. Pretty magical.
Right.
Well, shit, man. This has been an awesome talk,
man.
I really appreciate your time and your hospitality.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, man. Thank you to you, Jason, and thanks to everybody out there for listening. And we'll chop this up and get it.
Where's the best place for people to find your art if not in person?
So right now, and I do have a website, which is sinistermonopoly.com. I'm not the greatest at keeping it all like up to date, but so that's one way to like purchase art. And then I'm oftentimes just like an Instagram person. I don't really when I got out, and this whole time through this 5 years, I dabbled with other forms of social media, but it just became like too much. And then as I would delegate, I would give people my passwords. Like months later, they would have an issue and like lock me out, And so I have PTSD now.
Yeah, it's a mess, dude.
I really try to just work off of Instagram, and even then, I don't want to do that.
Okay.
In the real world, I like how you guys are out doing the farm thing, and I would just be somewhere painting and then call one guy and be like, hey, I'm sending them.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about the stuff.
We'll keep building up to that ourselves. Yeah.
But I've almost like given up on my Instagram because they don't share my content with anybody anymore.
Yeah.
When you look at the analytics, it says like, and it shows it says only like followers, and then it says non-followers. It's always 4 and 2 and 3. It's like they won't do it. Yeah. And they gave me all these messages, and part of it was because of the Escobar one that I would hashtag and do. And sometimes I think maybe, I don't know if people report me, but I was doing this series, which I thought was cool, and I was going to call it Open Borders. And sorry, I went too much.
No, it's cool.
But I was doing Open Borders, and I started like hashtagging like narco art, and that they just stifled my account. And I did a flyer where I put a picture of Pablo, and I called the art show American Dope. And as soon as I put that in my story, oh, boom, boom, you're fucking out. Like, you're kidding. Like,
they're the only ones that can push drugs.
Yeah,
right.
But no, you can get like somebody that we were talking about, another guy I know, he makes gun art. He takes like almost like a BB gun and puts it over like Louis Vuitton and does this cool like 3-dimensional art. And he's always getting like shut down, like shadow banned.
Yeah, they don't like any gun shit, probably. Huh?
Yeah. But yet they have like dudes boning their chicks and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
that's all good.
Deal.
Yeah, or like single moms like linking their OnlyFans.
Yeah, that's nuts, right?
I was joking that Aaron and I were going to start an OnlyFans. Like,
no, we're not.
No, it's not going to happen.
All right.
Well, yeah, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you guys powering off again.
Yeah, right in time.